My mother was born on the 5th of July, 1938. Grandma liked to say that the 4th of July fireworks the day before are what sent her into labor. She was born into a poor family with an immigrant father who escaped Poland after World War I. For several years, my mother and her parents lived in the storage room of the grocery store that they had because they could not afford to pay rent for both the grocery store and an apartment. My grandparents did not have any other children, so she was both the daughter that my grandmother wanted, as well as the son that my grandfather wanted. In many families, that might mean a tomboy who would toss a football with her father. But in their family, it meant an appreciation for mathematics and physics. She was also taught to read and write, and of course do arithmetic at a very early age. After high school, she attended Brooklyn College and received her bachelor's and master's degrees in mathematics. Upon completion, she went to work teaching. In 1962, she married my father. They were introduced because a certain Mrs. Goldstein thought they were perfect for each other because they were both tall. Besides raising my brother and me, our mother continued to develop her career. She began doctoral studies at night at Yeshiva University and became a full professor at Queensborough. During her close to 40 years tenure as a math professor, she co-authored a technical mathematics textbook. She started the homebound program for disabled students and was chairman of the math department for several terms. My father had met a young, shy, quiet girl, but found himself married to a dynamo who was anything but shy and quiet. The debate about whether or not my mother was a feminist has gone on for some time in our family. On the one hand, she wouldn't stop at nothing to attain equality professionally and academically. But when it came to family structure and Jewish tradition, she was 100% traditional. My mother was a voracious reader. Her favorite thing to read was murder mysteries. She could read more than 2 books in 1 week, as well as reading the entire New York Times on a daily basis. I remember going to visit her one day to ask, it was a Sunday, and I wanted to read the New York Times, but she told me that she canceled it because it was too big, and she couldn't read the whole thing, and it wasn't worth getting if you can't read the whole thing. I think what my mother will be remembered for the most is her eccentric sense of humor. Everyone thought of her as the funniest mom they knew. Several years ago, I bumped into my 7th grade teacher who hadn't seen me in 35 years. I told her my name and I wondered if she remembered me. She said that she could never forget me, because one evening in the 7th grade, she called my mother to complain about my behavior, and my mother indignantly responded the following: "I don't call you about my problems with you, why do you?" Life was not without hardship, though. But unlike many of us, she refused to put focus on it. She was an only child, and from an early age, she was responsible for the care of her parents. Later, she had to move her parents into the house to live with us because her mother was followed home from the store one day, and someone tried to break into the house with her. As soon as my mother heard about it, we went to Brooklyn, packed their bags personally, and moved them into our house. When my grandfather was nifter, my mother continued to take care of my father and my grandmother, all the while making strides in her career. My father became ill, and she was alone to care for him because Yechiel and I had already moved to Israel. She took care of him during his bout with cancer, 2 broken hips, leg amputation, and his final difficult weeks in the hospital when she slept by his bedside. When Daddy's Shloshim ended, you carried out by yourself the dream that you both had. To make Aliyah. And live together with your children and grandchildren in Israel. You brought Grandma with you, who at the time was 91 years old. You lived for over 10 years in Yerushalayim, had many friends, volunteered your time teaching mathematics to Ethiopians, and serving as treasurer of the local chapter of Amuna. You refused to seek out personal companionship. Even when I offered to get you a dog, you refused, insisting that after a lifetime of caring for others, you just wanted a break. You used to come to Beit Shemesh on a weekly basis to visit on Tuesdays when the kids would get home from school early. You loved to teach them math and English. You would have my girls sleep over at your apartment. You would take them to the museum to see various plays and try to introduce some cultures. After moving to Israel 18 years ago, you only left the country one time, and after that you decided that Chutz La'aretz just doesn't interest you anymore. She wanted to lead this life with all of the marbles intact. She had told some of the kids that she was okay if she would have physical disabilities as long as her mind was intact. Unfortunately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had other plans. Our family watched helplessly as dementia set in and her cognitive abilities declined. Even in that state, you tried to maintain your sense of humor and affectionately used to call me the stupid one. I would like to thank all of the hospital staff at Shaare Tzedek and all of our children who visited my mom and took care of her during the later parts of her illness. I'd especially like to thank Elisheva, who was so glad to be in the room during this Mount Tira because she had been there so much time. I'd like to thank Mabeth and Clarita, two women from the Philippines who cared for my mother no matter how difficult it got. Acharon Chabib, I would like to thank Cheryl and Tamara. A few years ago, I was joking with my mom, and I told her that she'd better stay healthy since she only has sons. That she's not at all worried because she has two very caring daughter-in-laws who will do the job just fine. Mommy, we will all miss you, but I'm very glad that your suffering is over. Yitz.